This is the Northwest Line Super Bowl show coming to you from Radio Row at the New Orleans Convention Center. Super Bowl 59 being hosted by the great city of New Orleans, featuring the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles. Our next guest is a man who knows well too well about what it takes to win a Super Bowl. He won 3 of them during his outstanding career with the Dallas Cowboys as a fullback. He is currently the president of football operations for the United Football League, and also he is still an analyst with Fox Sports. Daryl the Moose Johnston stops by. Can I call you Moose if you're like the president of the league, or I just call you Daryl? I'll call you Daryl.
Nah, you can call me Moose. I'll call you Moj. We'll be good.
We're all good. First off, I'm thinking about this. Here you got this nice gig with Fox Sports, and you get involved in the administrative side. I'm like, Daryl, why? Are you nuts? You got a great gig. You're doing games on the weekend. You fly in. You talk to the coaches and the players beforehand. You call the games. But why? Well, is it given back to the game? Is it that simple?
It gave you an opportunity to kind of put your stamp on the whole league. So it also gave you the opportunity to bring in the right people. And, we had good people in year one, and there was an opportunity to upgrade, and you're always looking to upgrade. So it's really, when you look at it, it's like building a team as a general manager, but now you're building a league with different people in different places. So, to be able to, get your equipment department, functioning the way you want it to with great leadership there, and then you can kind of turn that one over. And, I got real lucky with my strength and conditioning choice, and the only hard part there was we lost them last season to the Tennessee Titans. But, Zach Woodfin came in. He ran our program for 2 years in Legacy USFL. Now we've got Sean Hayes, who's fantastic. And then, the biggest part is the emphasis on today's game is player health and safety. So, having Kevin O'Neill there for us for a long time, who was my trainer in Dallas, and then when he decided to step away to be able to bring in a guy like Tim Neal, it's always about the people. It's always about the people. And Russ Brandon, our president and CEO, who's my boss and has been in the NFL for decades and was a team president for the Bills, that's one of the big things for him is, people without egos, people that are fun to be around, people that have that same purpose and are driven the same way. And then also being able to create that environment where everybody feels open to offering suggestions, because not everybody has all the answers. And we have no egos. I am incredibly impressed by our people, because we really don't. I hear a lot of people say it, but I can honestly tell you that the people that I work with on a day-to-day basis have no egos.
It's interesting. They're talking about no egos and everybody. You need a buy-in from everyone. It almost reminds me of what George McPhee said after the Vegas Golden Knights won the Stanley Cup. President of the Vegas Golden Knights, George McPhee, and I know George from his time in Vancouver, over 30 years now. And he said almost the exact same thing. And he said not just the players. He goes, I'm talking to everyone. He says, it's your equipment guys, it's your trainers, it's your people in the front office. Everybody's got to be selfless. Everybody's got to look at the common goal, which is what's best for the team. And that's exactly what you're saying there. It's almost like verbatim.
Yeah, our equipment guy, I don't know why he was available to us. He should be in the NFL, but he's not. But Anders Butel has been a guy that's come in, and he's just reshaped everything. And the validation comes from when somebody calls you, picks up the phone, and goes, wow, he is so forward thinking. He anticipates. I'm calling him up to make, hey, I just want to check and make sure. We already got that done. We did that last week. So just being around those people, and then you build that trust, and everything kind of, it's not that it's on autopilot, but now you're free to go do things that you consider to be very important, because you don't have to hover and watch over the shoulder of anybody in our organization.
What's been the biggest challenge?
For the league itself?
Or you can combine the answer there if you wish.
The biggest challenge for me is probably getting comfortable with a lot of the non-football parts, and finding a way to make that really important. And it just takes a couple of mistakes in areas that you didn't consider were life-shattering, and you can see how quickly those can cause a big problem. So just understanding how everything ties together, everything. The logistics of running a team, and then the logistics of running a league. And Russ always talks about it, 8 spinning plates, because we've got all 8 teams in the DFW area, and everybody's kind of working their own thing individually, but we're one family, working together. So that's been challenging. Just seeing how everything has to work seamlessly together. And to your point, making sure everybody feels a part of it, that it's not just about the players and the coaches and the guys who are really, day-to-day about the football, but how much we rely on the business side. And that's probably our biggest challenge from the league is spring football is hard because of the calendar. We've seen that in our iterations in Legacy USFL, where you're down in Birmingham, and when the weather starts to get nice, that's kind of when your league really wants to kind of get some momentum going behind it. And there's a lot of other things to do on the weekend besides come out to a spring football game.
Well, I'll say one thing, though, from a player's perspective, and I know talking to executives and GMs and coaches in the CFL, competing for a lot of the same players. You guys are guys that are not in the NFL or haven't been cut or whatever, or have been cut by the NFL, whatever the case may be. The one advantage you have is that you can run a player through your league and then he can go play in the NFL because the season is after, whereas with the Canadian Football League, overlaps with the NFL season. So a lot of guys are saying, well, you know what, if I go down and play in the United Football League and tear it up, I could go to training camp. That's not the case in the Canadian Football League. So that actually works for you in terms of player recruitment.
Yeah, and then some of your younger guys get on that rookie contract too, right? That's a 2-year deal. So now you're locked up for 2 NFL seasons. So, yeah, there's definitely some pluses and minuses. I think the length of our season, I think it fits well what we're doing right now. Just at 10 games. To your point, do we really want our guys, if they're going to be able to overlap and kind of roll right into that NFL opportunity? We don't want to really have them overburdened and have their bodies, to the point where it could be breaking down. Because I think right now what we hear from the general managers and the personnel people at the NFL level is, boy, you really can tell when one of your guys is in practice because they've just finished playing football. Yeah. They're in football shape. They're in contact shape. And they really kind of grab your eye right away, which is the most important thing because our guys aren't going to get a lot of looks. So when you get that look, you got to maximize it. And we're hearing more and more from a lot of the teams that your guys really kind of jump out early on when they first get on the field. And I think the biggest thing for us last year, and this is one of my favorite stories, is Jalen Redmond, who was a defensive lineman with Arlington, got an opportunity to go to Minnesota. So they don't make the playoffs last year, but he still plays the 10 regular season games, gets an opportunity to go up to Minnesota and get into, I think, maybe the final OTA that they did, and then he rolls into training camp. And all the way through the season, here's a guy that's already 10 football games. He's gone through an NFL training camp, and he's fighting and he's grinding, and he wins the starting role in December. And he's a part of that Minnesota Vikings team that went 14-3. And I'm so proud of him because that dispels a lot of those perspectives of it's hard on guys to put them through a 10-game season and then roll them into an 18-week, 17-game season in the NFL. And then if they go to the playoffs, well, here's Jalen Redmond, who didn't win the starting role until he got into, week 14, week 15. So, I think every time you have a challenge, you can look at it from a positive perspective and give somebody an example of somebody who was able to take advantage of that situation and maximize it.
Daryl Johnston is our guest, Super Bowl champion with the Dallas Cowboys, president of football operations for United Football League. Is there a frustration sometimes, and I say this because I know this in the CFL and I guarantee it in your league too, that there are a lot of guys that probably could play on Sundays if given the right set of circumstances and the right opportunity, but for whatever reason they don't get those circumstances or opportunity and, quote, they're just another guy.
Mm-hmm. I spoke with Carson Palmer years ago when he was in Arizona, and I'll never forget this, and it was exactly that question. How many guys do you know, timing, circumstance, offense not the right fit, change in coaching, that there's a guy out on the street right now that should be playing in the NFL? He's like, 8 or 10? And I'm like, what? He's like, oh, yeah. He goes, there's a couple of them that are, just as good as I am at the quarterback position. And I think the greatest example we have is Sam Darnold.
Yeah.
The Jets have struggled as an organization. Carolina has struggled as an organization. The reason they struggle is it goes back to people. What's your culture? You talk to Kevin O'Connell in Minnesota, and you get around that building and you get around that team, and it is different. And now you're talking about a guy who comes from the McVay tree. They're incredibly positive. It's completely different from Sam Darnold, from where he was doing it with the Jets or the Carolina Panthers. So that's not only frustrating, in our leagues, in the CFL and the UFL, but you see it go on at the NFL level as well, where, somebody always said, right, somewhere out there is the worst doctor in the world, and he's got people in his waiting room. And, you look at some of these teams, just because you're an NFL coach does not mean you're a great coach. And sometimes, these guys, they need to be coached hard. And I think, in the defense of the coaches today in the NFL, I don't think they're afforded the opportunity to have success as a coach because we've restricted so much of the time. When we make a cut in time in the NFL to stay within the parameters of what they've established through the NFLPA, it's usually individual period. Offensive lineman,
Yeah.
I mean, that's taking individual period away from an offensive lineman, one of the five that has to work over and over and over again.
Yeah, all that stuff. Daryl Johnston is our guest for a couple more minutes. Of course, Super Bowl champion with the Dallas Cowboys. I want to get into the game a little bit, but there's a great story that some guy named Bootsy, I think you might know him, your quarterback back in the day, Troy Aikman, told us. Very first Super Bowl we went to, he told us the story about Jimmy Johnson and the 2x4. To me, that is one of the best stories I've ever heard on Radio Row. The one where he walked into the dressing room, the locker room, threw the 2x4 down in the middle of the room and asked the question, how many of you guys can walk across this 2x4? You remember that?
Yeah, on the floor.
Yeah, what it was, it's just about focus. That was the whole theme of the speech.
How many can walk across it sitting on the floor? And I think all of us would have felt very comfortable. Then if we put that up on a 10-foot ladder, how many feel comfortable they can walk across that 2x4?
Yeah.
So just your surroundings, your environment. Like you said, don't worry about all the chatter around you. And Jimmy was really good with a lot of those. Just things, single examples like that would kind of clear your head and let you play free. That was a tremendous one. That was a tremendous one. He was my favorite Jimmy Johnson moment was Super Bowl 28 in Atlanta against Buffalo, the second matchup, and Buffalo's doing a really, really good job shutting our run game down, and they're ahead 13-6 at halftime. And we went in, and Jimmy is standing right outside the door, and everybody on the offensive side, he said, everybody go in, take care of your business as quick as you can. We know what they're doing. We're going to make a change here. We're going to bring a play back that we haven't run in about 4 weeks. We just want to make sure everybody's good with it from an assignment standpoint. But we really feel that this is going to force Buffalo out of the defense that they're running right now. Then we'll get back to our traditional run game. So we go in. We got extended time. I think that was another big lesson that Jimmy learned from his first Super Bowl to his second Super Bowl was I have a lot more time at halftime.
Yeah.
And we sat around a little bit that first year. This one, he managed the time really well at halftime. Now, everybody that has seen Super Bowl 28 against Buffalo and Atlanta, the opening drive for us looked like it was the same play. Emmett right, Emmett left, Emmett right, Emmett left. It was the same play. And we were just running a traditional power, kind of a pin and pull. Buffalo was stunting their tackles inside and wrapping their linebackers or inside linebackers around the outside, and it was really kind of creating some problems for us with our traditional run game. But if they continue to do that with the angles that we had on the power play, eventually they're going to have to stop doing that because we're just going to gash them. And we did. And they never got out of it. They got stubborn and they stayed in it, and we never really had to get out of that. So that to me was one of Jimmy's greatest coaching moments because we were flustered coming off that field at halftime, and he eased everybody's mind. And we know what they're doing. We got a solution for it. Get in, take your time, get off your feet. We'll come back to you. We'll get on the whiteboard. And when you go out in the second half, we're going to feel confident that we can win this game.
And the thing there too, Daryl, when you talk about that story, and the first time I've heard that story from you, is the fact that that instant feedback. Hey, this is working. Right, there's time when you make these adjustments or you try something, or we're going to get out of this, or we're going to do this way, and it doesn't work. You're like, okay, so much for that.
Yeah.
It worked. I mean, and it continued to work, as you mentioned. Hey, I know you don't have any skin in the game, and you are the president of football operations for the United Football League, but what do you want to see answered on Sunday? What are some of the questions or narratives heading into this game for you?
Well, I think the biggest one is, can Kansas City make history? I'm going to be a little bit selfish there. We were the first team to win 3 Super Bowls in 4 years, so I'd like to keep that and not let them win 3 in 3 years.
You can open some champagne on Sunday.
Yeah, like the old 72 Dolphins.
Exactly.
I think the great thing, which I didn't know about this until I went back and looked at it, I didn't realize that none of the other teams that had gone back-to-back ever made it back to the Super Bowl. We got beat in the championship game by San Francisco, so we didn't make it back to the Super Bowl, but they're the first team to do it. So I think the biggest thing for me is early in the game, when Spagnuolo blitzes is Jalen Hurts climbing the pocket. I'd love to see him look like Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes coming forward in the pocket instead of bailing out the backside, which Jalen tends to do, because Steve does stuff to flush you and then he traps you with the other guy coming in. So if they can do that and avoid any of the big negative plays, I think that's going to be huge. The other big matchup is Saquon versus a defense that hasn't given up a 100-yard rushing game to a running back this season. They gave up 122 to Lamar Jackson. But the highest by a running back is 88 by Joe Mixon in the divisional round. So how does Kansas City do against Philly's run game? I think it's going to be a great matchup, offensive line, defensive line. It's going to be definitely a trench game. The interesting thing, and I go back to this one because this comes from the old Sean Payton Super Bowl against Indianapolis, where he felt like he needed to steal a possession in the second half, and they came out and they did the onside kick to get that possession back. If you look at these two offenses, they are 1 and 2 in 10-play drives during the course of the season and 10-play scoring drives. So that means if they're both playing at a high level, there's not going to be a lot of opportunities. So who is able to take advantage of every possession? The one thing I have that's a worry for me besides Philadelphia is every game they have that lull. And we saw it against Green Bay in the first round. I thought they played their best against Washington. So you got two teams playing some of their best football, and I think that's probably Jalen Hurts' knee. How are you doing there? So if he can be viable in the run game and be able to move and climb up that pocket, I really think that Philadelphia has an opportunity. If they play 60 minutes, they cannot play 55 minutes. If they play 55 minutes of football, they will lose. Patrick Mahomes will make them pay for that little bit of a lull. But if they can play 60 minutes of football, I really think Philadelphia might win this game by 10 points.
Daryl, outstanding. This is the longest interview we had looking at my timer, but I feel like I could talk like another 10 minutes with you, and it feels like we've been only talking for 5. So thank you so much for stopping by. Great content. Continued success with Fox Sports as an analyst there, and, of course, as the president of football operations for the United Football League.
I grew up on a border town, so I was very familiar with the CFL. The Hamilton Tiger Cats are only about 30 minutes from the house.
Oh, see, we could go another 10 minutes now. You're teasing
Robert
me.
Drummond?
You're teasing me. Drummond, we played in BC. There you go, man. Hey, Daryl, thanks for doing this.
You got it.